purpose of this presentation is to introduce you to the different kinds of interview resources available, along with the typical interview questions and the STAR method. This is a roadmap to how you effectively interview. I'll begin today's session with providing some basic information about career resources because this is one of the best services for doctoral students and postdocs. Next, I'll offer some typical interview questions. I'll then walk you through the STAR method, and something that many doctoral students don't take advantage of is Interview Stream. I'll explain what this is and how to use it toward the end. I'll conclude with some suggestions for next steps. The first thing I want everyone to know is that there's a network of career services offices. Depending on which college or school your doctoral program or your postdoc program is located, you would access the services in one or more of these 4 career centers. If you are in engineering, the School of Business, or the School of Public Policy, we suggest you begin by getting to know the services and staff in the career centers embedded in your school or college. Visit their websites to learn more about them and their career portals, Careers for Engineers, Hire Smith, and UMD Policy Jobs. If you are a student or postdoc in any other college or school, you have access to the career services to the University Career Center and the President's Promise. That website is careers.umd.edu. Here you have access to your Careers for Terps account called C4T using the link in the upper left-hand corner of their homepage. Through your primary career portal and C4T, you can register for events, see job postings, and other online resources such as Interview Stream, where you can practice for your upcoming interview that you may have. All students are able to schedule an individual career advising appointment with Dr. Susan Martin, the Program Director for PhD Career Development, through C4T. Career services are offered for all PhD students and postdocs through the Office of Professional and Career Development in the Graduate School, which is in collaboration with the University Career Center and the President's Promise. More information is located on the Graduate School's website at go.umd.edu/PhD Career Info. On this website, you can find information and links to all of our upcoming workshops, career tools and resources for you, previous workshop and event recordings, and more. I provided Susan's email address along with mine should you like to contact us at any point about this workshop or the career and professional development services that our office offers. Our contact information is also listed on the website. This is just one of a number of workshops that are foundational to managing your career. And what I'm showing you is that there is actually a model for career development on the left here, and there are career competencies on the right-hand side. I'm not going to be covering all of them in this session, but you may be realizing that in addition to learning how to interview, there are some other things that you need to work on and master. For this session, I'm really focusing on number 8, how to master the art of effective interviewing. Part of your practice is to highlight which of your experiences and skills you're going to highlight in typical interview questions. This activity is going to be the way that you're going to identify the stories that you're going to weave together to create a powerful interview. What you see here on the right is a transferable skills activity sheet, and this is just the first page. It's located on the Graduate School's website at go.umd.edu/PhD resources. It provides you with instructions as I have here on the screen, and it helps you figure out how to not only identify what your skills are, but then provide specific examples of when you've used these skills. You're able to then provide a story of when with these transferable skills. And that's how you engage with an interviewer, through your own unique story of how you developed your skills. There are 2 places where you can see typical interview questions. The first is the TERP Guide, which is the Career Center's guidebook. You can find that on the University Career Center's website at careers.umd.edu. Typical interview questions are related to your educational background, past experiences, and future goals. There's also a set of questions that's inside the UCLA PhD Career Toolkit. I highly recommend looking at this. You can find that by simply Googling PhD Career Toolkit UCLA. If you haven't read one of these typical lists of interview questions, you can scan them. It's easy to get overwhelmed at first glance. In addition, I want to acknowledge that there are some illegal questions that interviewers aren't allowed to ask you. This list is inside the TERP Guide. Things like, are you married? How many children do you have? And so on. These things are prohibited questions, and as an interviewee, you can choose to answer them tactfully and with grace. But at the same time, you might be asking yourself, why are they asking me these questions, and what does that say about the particular employer? An employer cannot ask you if you are here legally, but they can ask you about your work authorization. So, for international students, you want to be prepared to talk about the CPT and the OPT part of the F1 visa. If you are a J1 scholar, you might be prepared to talk about the sponsorship if you need it. I want to point out for those of you who are international students that we have done previous webinars about how to be career ready. Also, the International Services Office, the ISSS, has instituted an International Student Services Career Series. And if you have further questions about work authorization, you want to schedule an individual appointment with a career advisor. My advice is to be very comfortable talking about what CPT is. And if you are ultimately interested in sponsorship, you want to feel comfortable talking about that. And the other part about tough questions has to do with being asked about salary requirements. If you are in a screening interview and they're asking you about your salary requirements, my advice is to demonstrate that you've done your research by providing a salary range, and you're going to communicate that based on your salary research that you did prior to the screening interview. You might even say, it's a bit early to talk about salary. I'd like to showcase my skill set and learn more about the position. I will be evaluating the entire offer. Salary negotiation and evaluation is an entirely different workshop, but I wanted to point out that you will be asked some of these questions. So, what I'm going to show you here are some mistakes around interviewing. Mistake number 1 is showing up underprepared. You don't want to show up to an interview and not know anything about the job or the company. You also want to have questions to ask, and I have an entire companion workshop about how to prepare for an interview. Mistake number 2 is talking poorly about your previous boss or company. You may be asked why you're leaving the company, but you should never say anything bad about your former boss in an interview, even if you didn't get along. You should always try to stay positive in an interview. You want the focus to be on you and your talent rather than anything that was wrong with your previous job. Mistake number 3 is talking about how much the job pays in a screening interview. First of all, you should have done your research to know how much the range of that position's salary is. So you should have some idea of the position's salary if it does not already list it. But then, you should not be the one to bring it up. Wait for it to come to you. If you bring up the salary, the interviewer may think that you're not interested in the position, but you're only interested in it only for the money. And you don't want to give off that impression. Ultimately, you should not be the one to bring it up, especially in the screening interview. We will talk more about what to do if the interviewer brings up salary in the workshops on negotiation. Mistake number 4 is not following up after the interview. You may think that you had a great interview, but you're not sure why you didn't get a call back. Following up is one of the most important points. The interview does not just end whenever you leave the office or get off the video call. You are still making an impression even after your conversation. A follow-up email the next day or 24 hours is essential just to remind them of who you are and why you are genuinely interested in their company and the position. This is an additional way to add value to the interview that you had. Alright, so here's a screenshot of Interview Stream, and I mentioned how it helps you practice and simulate the interview process. You need to access Interview Stream through your C4T account because this is a subscription that the university pays for. I would suggest that you start at the bottom in the resources. So you start with the Interview Suite URL in Resources, and I have my arrow pointing at it here. And what you're going to find is a list of key questions, and you're going to click on each question. A video is going to pop up with an HR person explaining the reasoning behind it and what the interviewer really wants to know. Then they're going to provide some suggestions on how to respond. If you haven't had interviews in a while or at all, I would start here and just look at these questions. Another thing that's nice is that there's a whole set of interview tips in the middle column, such as what if they ask me an impossible question, or things you need to find out about the company that you're interviewing with. And then off to the far right, there's a list of interesting things like nonverbal communication and while waiting in reception. You're being interviewed as soon as you get there, even when you're in the waiting room. There's even a list of typical mistakes and how you should follow up. So definitely start with a resources list. And after this, you'll be ready to conduct your interview. So click Conduct an Interview, and then you have the ability to customize your interview. So there is a list of questions that it provides for you. If you're new to InterviewStream, I would recommend to use the list that is General Question List, or 15 Most Common Questions. And you can go through this list and pick and choose which questions you select from the 15 questions to include in your personalized interview. So if you want, you don't have to answer all of those 15 questions. You can choose to answer 6 or even 3. So you could just move them over to the right in the selected questions. And once you're ready, you would click Start My Interview. There's one last thing that I want to show you in here, and it's a guide. It's in the resources, and after you watch your videos for the first time in InterviewStream, you may notice that you say or like more than you want. I definitely did this the first time I practiced with InterviewStream, and you may notice several other nervous tics that you're doing. Well, one thing to help you is to obviously practice more with these questions, but also this rubric and resources could also help you as you work through your practice questions, and that is the like guide. It's a terrific resource, and as are the other resources in InterviewStream, if you have time to check them out, of course. But after you practice enough, I would recommend setting up an appointment with a career advisor to receive feedback on your interview responses. And the really last thing that I want to go over here is an important part of the interview process, and this is the STAR method. This is a technique that will allow you to weave in specific instances of times where you've used a particular skill. And what using the STAR method does, it actually proves to the interviewer that you have the skills that they are looking for. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, any of us can still say that we have a particular skill, but when we are asked a specific question, this technique is going to help us really convince the interviewer that we have the skills that they're looking for. So the STAR method is a roadmap, and these are the 5 pieces that we're going to weave into an answer to a question like, tell me about a time that you've used written communication skills. So you're going to choose a very specific instance, a very specific task. So think of the stories that you're going to tell about yourself. You know the things that you've accomplished, your career stories. You are then going to describe the specific actions that you took to accomplish the task. And I want to point out that oftentimes people in interviews will use the word we or they. What can feel really uncomfortable or rude if you come from a more collaborative or connective culture where you do speak about the broader we is using I. But interviewers really want to know what you actually did. An employer wants to know how you're going to be able and what you're going to be able to do for them. If culturally it feels uncomfortable to talk about your specific role, practice will help you with that. So that's what the A, action. The first R is the results. You're going to talk about what happened as a result of whatever you did. So you're going to show how you achieved the task of that part of the scenario. Now, Dr. Susan Martin added the second R. STAR has been around for a while. The second R is called relate. It's a really nice way to tie up this method neatly to talk about how this particular instance demonstrates that you have the skills required for the position that you're interviewing for. Alright, let's suppose that an interviewer asks about a time where you had to clean and analyze data. This is a very simplistic example, but I want to show you the difference between answering generally and answering using the STAR method. If you haven't practiced a lot, your first inclination might be to say something like, in my dissertation research, I collected data and I analyzed data. But then you might go on to talk about your dissertation research and speak in broad terms. But with STAR, you would provide many details. A typical interview question might be 2 minutes at most. If you're using the STAR method, you would provide context about your dissertation. So rather than saying, in my dissertation research, provide a bit. You would describe it. You would say, my dissertation research was about the multicultural competence of community college student service practitioners, and I used mixed methods. And you would name the kind of mixed methods that you used. You would describe in more detail the kind of data that you were collecting. So I had an online survey monkey, and my response rate was, etc. But again, you would use the STAR method. The situation has to be just enough detail so that they get the context, but you're not going down a rabbit hole. Then you would talk about the task. So T. My task was to summarize the data, and it was to inform the interviews that were going to be conducted. I had 200 responses to the survey, and out of that, I had another 20 volunteered for interviews. And I needed to follow up with them. So A, the action. So by walking them through the S, T, and A, you're focusing on naming the skills within the context of the particular situation. Then you would talk about the results, and you might provide some specific findings. And you would say, I understand from the job description that I would be doing the survey and interview research on such and such population. So this example takes your answer from something very generic and mediocre to something that really provides an illustrated example and leaves an impression on an employer. So using the STAR method prevents you from rambling. Once you start recording yourself, you'll be able to see that you might be spending too much time on one part of the method, maybe setting up the situation or the results. The most common mistakes are to not set it up well enough or too much, and the second most common mistake is to not talk enough about the results and relating it back to the position that you're interviewing for. You can use this method even when the question is very general. If they don't ask about an example or tell them about a time, you can answer the question and use the words, let me tell you about a specific example, so that you can understand more clearly how I use that skill. So you can choose to use the STAR method even if the interviewers are not asking for behavioral-based questions. I also want to show you some additional resources here. Everyone at Maryland, students, faculty, staff, has access to LinkedIn Learning for free. There are numerous videos on interviewing, career development, and the job search process. Some videos are longer than others, and some are part of other courses, but these are additional supportive tools to help you. Our Graduate School Writing Center is also available to help. Not only do they help with writing, but they help support communication. So you can set up a consultation with one of the fellows, and you might even begin by brainstorming how you would turn a research project into a job talk. And they are fully equipped to help you with conceptualizing, and they can help you with practice, so they can give you some feedback. And if you're looking for academic jobs, and if you haven't been working with TLTC, the Teaching and Learning Transformation Center, you definitely want to go to their website and look at the kinds of events and programs that they have. They can help with teaching portfolios, diversity statements, and research statements with the University Teaching and Learning Program. There's also NCFDD, the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity. They have a great 12-week dissertation completion support tool on their website, and it is absolutely free. They also have a resource library, and they have videos on interviewing. Alright, so here are some suggestions for next steps. After today's session, you might review some of the typical questions in the TERP guide and the UCLA toolkit. Then recall 10 to 12 stories that highlight your skills and experiences relevant to this position. I would also highly recommend looking at Interview Stream. Remember, look at those resources in Interview Stream. Once you've done that, practice recording yourself in Interview Stream. It may feel strange at first, but it is incredibly helpful. And after you practice on your own for a bit, schedule an appointment for live feedback with a career advisor. Again, this is our contact information and our website link, along with our Twitter handle. And if you'd like to receive feedback for your practice interview, you can make an appointment with staff in your primary career center or with Dr. Susan Martin. And if you'd like to discuss how this type of session might be done for members of a graduate student organization, please contact me directly. Thank you for taking time to attend this session, and we look forward to supporting you through your career development and job search process.